I think that a lot of philosophers, maybe most moral philosophers today, think that morality is autonomous, meaning it doesn't depend on your other beliefs about the world. It doesn't depend upon the will of God. It doesn't depend upon your believing in God. And I think this is quite wrong, really. I think there is a basic morality, there's a basic moral agreement you can get whether or not you believe in God. Nevertheless, a morality based on belief in God is very different from a morality which is not based on belief in God. And the root of that difference is, I think, belief in whether there is any purpose or goal in the existence of the universe, and particularly whether there's any goal for human beings. Is there a way that human beings ought to live, whatever they think? Is there a goal that it is proper for them and possible for them to aim at, whatever they think? That's the point. And I think a non-theistic morality cannot say there is such a goal. It doesn't make sense within that worldview. So you'd have to work it out in terms of, well, what makes for the most acceptable sort of life, as it actually is in this world. Whereas a theistic morality, one is based on belief in God, is both easier and harder in different ways. It's easier in the way that you do think. It is nice to think, it is comforting, if you like, to think there is a goal in human life which God could help you to achieve, and at least it gives you a sense of optimistic purpose in the long run, and something to aim at. But comforting is not quite the right word for that, because it's also much harder to live that life. And you have to, well, in the worst cases, of course, be prepared to give your life, to be a martyr, to give many things up. As Jesus said, you must take up your cross and follow me. So you've got this balance in a theistic morality between, well, it gives you a sense of purpose, which is good, but it may lead you to die. And Jesus, of course, is the primary example of this, as somebody who had a sense of purpose, the kingdom of God and its advent, and also he died because of this. So theistic morality, both in its sense of striving for a purpose, even though you know it probably won't succeed in this life, right? Not giving up, and in the sense of being prepared to die for the sake of your moral beliefs. These are things which a non-theist would find very difficult to justify. I'm not saying impossible, because humans can think their way through almost anything, but it's not easy to see how, if you really thought there was objectively no way that humans ought to live, why should you try very hard to live in a particular way unless you felt like it, and then one day you might not feel like it, and so what would be wrong with that? And I think the best example of a non-theistic morality is somebody like Jean-Paul Sartre, who just ended up by saying hell is other people. and there's no way out, really. You're just stuck with this life. You make up a purpose, but you know there isn't any purpose. You're bound to fail. He was quite a depressive character, really.
Yes, indeed.
And so I think there is a big difference. I think belief in God does make a difference. And indeed, I do think that most human beings do have a sense that there are things they ought to do, and that there is a way they ought to live, and that it's worth striving morally, even if what you're striving for is going to fail. And I think that is a good argument for God, because none of those things really make sense without a belief that there is a purpose which could be achieved. So that's why I favour a theistic morality, although, as I say, most moral philosophers, assuming there's no God, have to find some other basis, and I think that's very hard to do. I think there are two parts, really, at least two parts to a theistic morality. One is the sense of purpose. There is a goal to be achieved, and it will be a fulfillment of human capacities in human life, not a diminishment of it. The other thing is that there is an objective reality of goodness, that is, that God is perfectly good. So God is a being who fulfills all desires. In other words, there is something to love. I mean, if you think morality is a matter of just doing your duty, you do it because it's right, well, that's okay. to do that, yes. If you think it's a matter of loving other people, well, if you look at them hard, that's going to be difficult to keep up for long. But if you think it's a matter of loving God, who is supremely perfect, and who loves you, and you're responding to that love, that's a completely different approach. So you can actually love, you can do what is right because you love the person who tells you to do. And that's a completely different motivation for morality. I don't see how a non-theist could have such a motivation. So I do not think that an atheist has to be immoral. I don't think that at all. I think they just find it hard to justify morality, and they lack that element that there is love as well as duty in morality. And I think Christians have that enormous privilege, saying we love because we are loved.